Wait, so one of the most celebrated YouTube filmmakers is struggling with audio. Really? I just want to be clear here. This is not a hit piece trying to make other people feel bad about their audio, namely Peter McKinnon. So if you came here for a smackdown, go elsewhere. This is a learning piece, and honestly, it is great to see someone of Peter's ilk talking about this kind of stuff because it humanizes the audio struggle. And in a world of audio arrogance and a ton of shame, this is actually kind of refreshing. And may I just say, hey Pete, we're literally just down the highway from you. So if you ever need a consult, hit me up. So for this, we're going to be going through one of his recent videos called I Became Obsessed with Audio. Here's what I learned. And we're not going to be going through the whole thing because a lot of it isn't relevant, but I'm going to hit on some key points before we get into how he treats his audio. For starters, the first half of the video is Peter talking about the bad audio he's getting and how it's keeping him away from shooting. And it's funny, in the build-up, Pete and Maddie are talking about how working with old microphones from 2017 and how everything just seemed to work back then.
We've been doing this for so long. How can that be?
I showed you the screen.
How are we going back to like the mics from like 2017 to fix our audio problems?
So there's an interesting point here. Old microphones are fine. If you have a setup from 2017 that just works, use it. Well, there are a lot of things that do get better over time. When it comes to microphones, they're not really one of those things that get better. Next up, we have one of the most common mistakes that people make when dealing with audio. And that, my friend, is gain staging.
That most of my close friends know about this issue. I literally turn my levels around and set them manually before we even start vlogging and let everyone I'm with see the levels so we can all confirm. I hit set, I film, I come back, they're peaking.
So this is something that a lot of people don't understand. You should never be recording hot. Aim for your peaks at neg 18, especially when you're in an uncontrolled environment. Any audio producer who knows what they're doing will record their audio like this. And the reason is simple. You get headroom. Now, the newer gear with the 32-bit float allows you to be a bit more negligent here, but for a run-and-gun setup like what Peter uses, that's not an option. That is until camera companies start using 32-bit float. But if you set your levels too high, like neg 9 or neg 6, they're going to peak. There's nothing you can do about that. It's not enough room for recording, period. Now, if you're going to do work in post, adding gain in post is perfectly fine. Next, and the last bit before we get into the actual production of audio, Pete said something here that I didn't actually expect.
This kind of audio for a vlog would just be weird. It would take you out of the moment. It doesn't suit that kind of raw, gritty, authentic, on-the-go footage. It suits in a studio where you've lit it. I've got a nice background, insane background, by the way. Look at that. Are you kidding me? When you have a nice setup like this, I want the audio to match the feeling of this vibe right now. Bad audio in general is just always bad. It always sounds bad and it always takes you out of the moment, no matter what you're filming. It doesn't matter how good the camera is, doesn't matter how good the piece is, doesn't matter how good the story is. If the audio sucks, the video likely sucks.
Now, this is interesting because some even seasoned pros in audio do not understand this concept. And I think it's because Pete is a filmmaker. He understands how things are absorbed by the listener and how important it is to paint a picture. You see, when somebody cracks a new podcast, there's an expectation of what kind of audio there's going to be on the other end. And there are certain podcasts that have come along that have set that expectation. But that same audio quality would sound weird and off-putting in like an on-location sound. It would sound too polished, too perfect. Remember, it isn't about what you like, it's more about giving the listener what they expect. Just because you like how something sounds doesn't mean the listener will. These abstract concepts take more of an understanding of the final product, and someone like Pete is the type of person that thinks like that. The whole of the project is way more than just the audio or the video. Okay then, let's get into some of Pete's advice. And again, this isn't a shame game, but at this point in the video, Pete's talking about treating the audio he gets from his SM7B, which is plugged into a Mix Pre 3.
So I've got the Shure SM7B, that's going into a cloud lifter. The noise floor of these mics is generally a little bit lower. So if you're not using the cloud lifter and then you got to kind of like raise the volume of the mic in post, you get that kind of like background kind of hiss because you're raising that noise floor up too high. Hate that. Cloud Lifter just makes this mic louder without ruining that noise floor. And then all of this is going into the Sound Devices Mix Pre. Marquez got me on that years ago when we were chatting, and I was like, yo, give me your best audio recommendations. It was this off-camera recorder and the boom mic that he uses, the Sennheiser MK, I forget. Let's just call it MKBHD.
Okay, so a bit of a common misconception here. Pete's talking about the noise from a preamp when it's gained up too high. Now, while there are some microphones out there that do impart a noise floor, the SM7B isn't one of them. However, he is right. A cloud lifter does offer some protection against that noise floor. But honestly, especially with something like the Mix Pre 3, that noise is because you are, again, recording too hot. Even the first Mix Pre 3 had 76 dB of gain. Now, when you start cranking that up past 65 dB, which I'm guessing what is happening, you just get more noise. But if you were to record at neg 18, you won't be needing that cloud lifter. Again, though, still not overly concerning, as it is a viable option for many to just use a cloud lifter. Just a touch of understanding is important, though, because when you know where that noise is coming from, you will have a much easier time in post. However, he mentions that Marquez from MKBHD is the one that told him to buy the Mix Pre 3. And yeah, it is kind of the standard for filmmakers, but it's a touch overkill for almost everyone that's not making money on their content. A Scarlett, a Lewitt Connect 6 or Connect 2, there's a ton of options out there with really low noise for you to use. Don't just go and buy a Mix Pre unless you know what you're doing. Okay, next, Pete gets into his EQ settings.
Let's start with the disclaimer. I'm not an audio engineer. I literally really don't understand how any of this works. I'm not even sure what half these things mean. I just click them and then things sound great. Click on parametric equalizer. That brings up this window. See this fun little graph? This is also just information that I have scoured the internet for over 2 years and hundreds of videos. I almost couldn't even tell you why the graph looks the way it does. That's just how it looks. I said it like that once. Now I hit OK every single time and it sounds great. So I've never bothered to change it.
Okay, so just a note here. I do like the humility from Pete here. Nice to see. As for that EQ graph, okay, there's a couple notes. Every microphone and every voice requires a different EQ. Now, there are some great starting points, but this isn't one of them. The high pass is fine. It's a bit low and really only lopping off any extreme low frequencies. I would suggest moving that up to about 60 hertz. On the other end of the spectrum, you have the high shelf, and that's not bad. Honestly, you could give it a touch more if you wanted, especially with a microphone like the SM7B, but it's not going to be super rough on your audio. That boost at 5K though, please don't do that. In fact, it's literally almost 4900 hertz, meaning it's right in the sweet spot for sibilance. And honestly, anywhere in that 5K zone is a no-go. You never boost that. Most people, that boost is going to create some difficult to listen to audio. If you were going to do anything to this curve to make it better, it would be to remove that boost. Now, honestly, if you want a good starting point for EQ, it would be the basic vocal stock EQ setting. It's way safer, but if you really want to take Pete's advice here, just be careful around that 5K region. And as I said before, all voices are different and require different EQs. Are you nasal? Are you muddy? Things can get a bit more wild in that EQ. Now let's look at a few of his compression ideas.
Next up, we're going to compress that bitch. Just give me compression. That's like someone saying like it gets too loud and they kind of tone it down. It gets too quiet, they tone it up. It's just like it kind of levels out everything and gives it like a punch and an even tone that I feel like just...
Looks like he's just using the preset here. Pretty basic settings. And again, never a bad idea to just use stock profiles when you don't really understand what you're doing. Compression can really kill your audio though. Remember, it reduces the difference between the loud and the quiet in the audio, so the dynamic range of the audio. And audio and storytelling needs dynamic range. A mosquito and a jet engine should never have the same volume, so please be careful when it comes to all things compression. Now, next, Pete kind of surprised me using the mastering tool in Adobe.
Now, beyond that, I use something called Excite. That's in the mastering tab right here. It's like adding brightness and clarity, like fake sparkle and excitement.
Okay. So that's interesting. He basically just throwing on an exciter. And if that sounds familiar, it should, because that's all just the same thing as what Rode offers, just minus the big bottom. Of course, this is referring to Aphex, which was created in the 70s. And if you missed my video on Aphex, it's up here. You should check it out. But this is a solid move here. Now, finally and confusingly, he does noise reduction last. So let's check that out.
I use the noise reduction process, which lets you capture a noise print. So if there is a specific section of your clip that's a little bit noisier, you can zoom into that by hitting plus on your keyboard if you're on a Mac, and then just take your cursor and click and drag and highlight over the section where there's no talking, like right in there, and then capture noise print. And then you select the entire clip in that window and hit OK, and it applies it to the whole thing.
I mean, sure, this is something you can use in your audio chain, and Audition one is actually quite good. But this should have been done way earlier. In fact, this should have been done first in my mind. You remember that compression? Well, the issue is that the compression would have made that noise sound worse. So doing noise reduction first is probably the best. It's important to note here though, noise reduction is not always the answer, especially if the ambient noise is bad where you're shooting, because this process removes the noise between your words. But the noise is still there while you're talking, so it can actually really wreck your audio doing this. And if you're shooting outside with a vlog, noise reduction can actually create a very fake sounding environment that is off-putting to viewers. So just be careful there. Now, honestly, that's it with this video. Again though, if there is one thing you should really be focusing on is the fact that even the pros like Peter McKinnon struggle with audio. And having more people talk about it and what works for them should be celebrated and discussed. And while I'm out here correcting some of the best practices by Pete, remember, he's doing what is best for him and he's having it work for him. And let's just take a look. Oh yeah, 6 million subs and over 100,000 views on this video. So yeah, I think he's doing just fine. Remember that the next time you're being hard on yourself for your own audio. Cheers, guys, and thanks for watching.